Not hearing us. Not hearing. I can't hear a thing.
Yes, we're having some technical challenges.
No, I hear you.
Right, and we'll be back in a minute.
Okay, okay, good.
Yes, just the audio.
Okay. Just
Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Good afternoon, audience. We're having a few technical challenges, but we're trying to get them to resolved as quickly as possible. Hi, I'm William Aiken, Assistant District Governor for Rotary District 7020. And on behalf of District Governor Charles Seeley II and District Health and Wellness Chair Cheryl Chance, Past Assistant Governor, I welcome you to our World Diabetes Day webinar done in collaboration with the Diabetes Association of Jamaica and Rotary clubs in District 7020 and 7030. Our proud sponsors are Boehringer Ingelheim and Abbott Nutrition. The Pan American Health Organization has estimated that there are 60 million persons living with diabetes in the Americas. And if trends continue, by the year 2040, they estimate that number will double to 120 million persons. Diabetes is a major cause of premature death, morbidity, and disability. The purpose of this webinar on World Diabetes Day is to increase awareness of this condition and to promote ways in which it can be prevented or ameliorated. We will also be highlighting the important role of the nurse in managing diabetes. Of course, the adverse effects of the COVID-19 pandemic on persons living with diabetes and how to prevent these will be highlighted. I now turn you over to the Jamaica's Minister of Health and Wellness, Dr. the Honorable Christopher Tufton.
Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to congratulate the Rotary Club of Downtown Kingston for hosting this webinar on World Diabetes Day. As we turn the spotlight on diabetes this November, we must acknowledge the scale of the problem of NCDs and redouble our efforts to solve it, drawing on all our resources, including our nurses who are essential not only as healthcare providers, but also as professionals to whom we can rely for the promotion of self-care management among patients. Our nurses also play a role in helping to safeguard the mental health of their diabetic patients from identifying emergent psychosocial to making the appropriate interventions to support their patients. This year's theme for World Diabetes Day, Diabetes Nurses Make a Difference, therefore is most appropriate. And in a year designated as the Year of the Nurse, this World Diabetes Day, we encourage stakeholders, from persons living with diabetes to their family and friends and others involved in their care management, to join our nurses in the effort to ensure the best possible health outcomes for persons with diabetes, and to, as far as possible, engage in behaviors to reduce the incidence of diabetes and other NCDs. Those behaviors include increased physical activity, a healthy diet, routine health checks, and strict medication adherence. All the best, and thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish to congratulate the Rotary Club of Downtown Kingston for hosting this webinar on World Diabetes Day. As we turn the spotlight on diabetes this November, we must acknowledge the scale of the problem of NCDs and redouble our efforts to solve it, drawing on all our resources, including our nurses who are essential.
We're facing a global pandemic of diabetes, especially type 2, which is potentially preventable in many cases, but sadly, half the people that have it probably don't know they have it. We know there are high-risk groups who are at greater risk of diabetes, so I think selective screening of high-risk groups may well be effective. If we catch people early in the, if you like, the pre-diabetes phase, there's so much we can do. Diet, a sensible diet, and exercise. You don't have to flog yourself in the gym. You can just do 45 minutes walking a day. There has been a huge step forward in technology, using insulin infusion devices and also continuous glucose monitoring. And these can just be sitting on the arm. And at any time, you can just put your phone there and you can get to the blood glucose reading. And this stops the regular finger pricking, which is day in, day out, quite a burden. So we're focusing this year on the role and the importance of the diabetes specialist nurse and midwife. Our nurses in my hospital prescribe insulin and all hypoglycemic agents. So the nurse is pivotal in the team. If you ask me who is the most important in the team, I would probably say the nurse and the patient.
Okay, thank you for listening. So I am Dr. Aiken, proud Rotarian and a consultant urologist, and I will be chairing the first panel today, focusing on what is diabetes and on some of its complications. Thank you for joining us this afternoon from across the world. We have a distinguished panel with us this afternoon that will be laying the foundation by answering questions such as, what is diabetes? Can it be prevented or reversed? Does it run in families? What problems does diabetes cause? And what can be done to prevent them? Well, there are many more questions, and we hope that by the end of this program, most, if not all, of your questions will be answered. Members of our panel include Professor the Honorable Errol Morrison. Let me tell you a little bit about Professor Morrison. He is the former president of the University of Technology, and he's a professor of biochemistry. In 2011, Professor Morrison was awarded the Helmut Bernhardt UN UNESCO Award for the prevention of diabetes and its complications. He has been honored by the government and people of Jamaica by being awarded the Order of Jamaica. We also have with us Professor Marvin Reed. Professor Marvin Reed is a nutritional epidemiologist and the former head of the Tropical Metabolism Research Unit. He is currently the Deputy Dean of the Faculty of Medical Sciences at the University of the West Indies, Mona campus. To my right, we also have Mr. Owen Bernard, a British-trained senior podiatrist practicing in Jamaica. He is a founder of World Walk Foundation Jamaica chapter that deals with foot health in general, especially those in high-risk groups such as the elderly and in those with diabetes. He's also the proud author of the Foot Care Assistant Program, which has been exported to other Caribbean islands and Nigeria. And finally, we have Dr. Ryan Francis. Dr. Ryan Francis has a Master's of Philosophy in Biotechnology and a PhD in Biochemistry from the University of the West Indies, Mona. His areas of specialization are plant disease diagnostics, in vitro culture, and diabetes management. He's also certified functional nutrition. He's currently the team leader in the biotechnology department at the Scientific Research Council. Ladies and gentlemen, we're in for a real treat this afternoon. And so to start the program going, I'm going to ask Professor Marvin Reed to explain to our listeners what exactly is diabetes and why is it so important that a whole day is reserved internationally to talk about it. Professor Reed. Turn on your mic.
Thank you, Dr. Aiken. So diabetes is one of those conditions that we classify as a chronic non-communicable disease. And what do we mean by that? We mean that at this point in time, there is no cure that we have for this particular condition. The other issue is that diabetes, as you noted in your opening remarks, is a very common disorder. And many persons will know or have relatives or friends or neighbors who are affected with this condition. And because of how common it is, because it is that we have no cure, and because it affects individuals at all ages, meaning you can have babies, you can have young infants, you can have adults with diabetes, it is really an important problem. Diabetes affects every single organ system that there is in the body. And because of that, it means that all healthcare providers will have a role in caring for this particular condition.
Thank you, Professor. What in diabetes? What's the difference?
The commonest form is largely because the body is not responding properly to a hormone that normally handles the sugar and other nutritional products in the body. This hormone insulin would normally ensure that all the nutritive factors get into the blood cells. But although it is there in the body in type 2, the function is inadequate. Type 1, on the other hand, is when there is no insulin or totally insufficient insulin. And as a result, the same thing happens. The nutrition, the sugars and the fats and the small building blocks called amino acids can't get into the tissues. So type 1, then you have to replace the insulin versus type 2, where you can modify the environment in the body to respond better to the insulin. And quite often, what is necessary there is weight control as a major factor that helps to cause what you call resistance to the functioning of the insulin.
Thank you, Professor Morrison. Professor Reed, back to you. So we have been told that diabetes is very common. I think a recent study done demonstrated that 1 in 12 persons in Jamaica are living. Why is it that this condition is so common? Why is it thought to increase in?
All right, so diabetes, as you quite rightly say, is common. It's actually even more common than you just say. It's actually closer to 1 in 6 adults who will have diabetes. So if you look at your friends, you find that probably at least 2 persons out of those will be diabetic. So why is it so common? It is common because of 2 reasons. There is what we call a genetic component, which is things that you inherit from your parents. And then there's a whole issue of what we call obesity. And over time, is that the population in the things that we eat are not appropriate. The quality of the stuff that we're eating is not appropriate. So
if I've understood correctly, diabetes does run in families, Professor Reed?
Yes, diabetes does run in families. There's a genetic component to that. So typically you'll find in some families, one person who's diabetic and several other persons in the family will become diabetic as well. But apart from that, the vast majority of persons, though, will get diabetes because of what we call their lifestyle choices essentially, and part of that, your diet, what you put, as well as how well you're able to do physical activities. Those are the 2 main factors.
Professor Morrison, I'd like to throw this question to you. If both parents of someone are diabetic, does it invariably mean that they're going to become diabetic? Do they have any chance of avoiding diabetes?
They are certainly on a collision course to develop diabetes. But as Marvin is pointing out there, if the proper precautions are taken in terms of maintaining body weight, exercising, eating properly, those are some of the early things that one can do. And to have regular checks, because caught very early, it is being shown that the so-called pre-diabetic condition can be harnessed there or even reversed in certain situations. So, in terms of its development, it certainly can be, let us say, contained, to use the best language.
Sure. Thank you, Professor Morrison. Professor Reed, what exactly is it about diabetes about obesity rather, that increases one's risk of becoming diabetic? Why?
All right. So when someone is obese, in a sense, what we're saying is that the amount of fat that they have in their body is much higher than what it should be. So that's really what all obesity is about. Now, when you have this excess fat, it alters how the cells work. It alters the cell metabolism, which is so important, that regulates the movements of molecules right throughout the body. So fat people tend not to be able to regulate or respond to the insulin well, and so they're at an increased risk of getting diabetes.
Okay, thank you, Professor Reed. And we just stay on the line. How does someone know that they're diabetic? What are the symptoms? What are the common symptoms of diabetes?
Well, there are many symptoms of diabetes, but typically what may happen is that they may find that they are losing weight, paradoxically, that someone may just be losing quite a bit of weight. You may find that they are prone to infections, skin infections, other kinds of infections. You may find that they're always thirsty. They may find that they go to the bathroom and pee a lot, but here when they pee lots of volume. So in the medical term, we call it polyuria. So as I said, the best way though is really to test, right? And oftentimes individuals will not be aware that they're diabetic until we actually test them and find that their blood sugar numbers are actually high.
Sure.
Can I just
Thank
come
you,
in
Professor.
there?
I'd like to bring in Dr. Ryan Francis at this point. Dr. Ryan Francis, we have heard that diet plays a major role in the development of diabetes. Tell us about your research in low and high glycemic foods and diabetes.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Akins. So Prof. Reed and Prof. Morris spoke about nutrition, and Prof. Reed spoke about quality nutrition. So what we're saying is that not all carbohydrates in foods are created equally. Some foods, when you consume them, the carbohydrate causes a moderate increase in your blood sugar level, while with other foods, you have a rapid increase and then a rapid decline, which is not good for persons who are diabetic as well as normal individuals. So there's a quality perspective with regards to low glycemic index versus high glycemic index. And there's also a quantity perspective that you have to monitor the portion size that you consume as well.
Thank you. Give us some examples of what you would consider those high glycemic index foods, those foods that spike your blood sugar.
All right. So what that means, Dr. Aikens, is that often the food that we like to eat are the high glycemic index ones. So your vegetables are generally low glycemic index, and your fruits. However, some of your fruits, such as pineapple, which is high glycemic index. Other food that we traditionally eat in Jamaica, like your yams, your dasheen, are often high glycemic index. So we have to be cognizant of those food, as well as the preparation method that we use to prepare them locally.
Okay, thank you. You know, one of the common complications we see in persons with diabetes are foot complications. All of us would know someone who may have lost toes or even a foot or a leg as a result of diabetes. I'd like us to bring Mr. Owen Bernard in here now, consultant podiatrist, and ask him, what is it about diabetes that causes the foot to be susceptible, and how can we prevent that?
Thank you, Dr. Aiken. One of the crucial components in the management of diabetes is foot care. It's an area that is still neglected. Diabetes affects the feet through the circulation, which in turn affects the nerve. So the individual ability to feel and ability to fight infection tend to become reduced. However, it's not inevitable that once somebody has diabetes, they're going to lose the sensation in their feet. There are a multitude of foot problems out there that needs to be addressed. Once an individual has been diagnosed with diabetes, these needs to be identified and managed. And by so doing, able to reduce the amputation rate. Amputation is almost preventable.
Thank you, Mr. Bernard. Professor Morrison, I'd like to come back to you, and you know, we're going to have to be wrapping up this session very soon. So I'd like you to tell us, what are some of the things persons living with diabetes can do to improve their quality of life and minimize their risk of complications?
Simply put, eat less and walk more. And by explaining that eating less, again, what we're trying to say is to avoid overburdening the system in terms of the food intake, and to spread the meal intake out through the day, small meals more frequently, and to utilize that energy that you are taking in by ensuring that you burn off some of those calories daily. Minimum of about 30 minutes, good, brisk walking daily. That combination is, as I keep saying in every situation, is the fundamental treatment and management of diabetes.
Thank you very much, Professor Morrison. Professor Reed, we are in a COVID-19 pandemic. How has this affected the management of diabetes and diabetes in general? And is there any advice that we could give persons to minimize the risks attended by COVID-19?
All right, so COVID-19 is really a double-edged sword. So what we have found is that COVID-19 infection itself in some individuals can actually trigger diabetes. That's one issue. The second issue relates to the fact that individuals who actually have diabetes are at higher risk of having bad outcomes when they do get infected with COVID. And so the public health measures that we promote, which is physical distancing, and personal hygiene, hand sanitization, those sort of things are very important for persons with diabetes to practice. In addition to that, we also encourage them that they must continue taking their medication because blood glucose control is important, and they must continue to get their health checks done. Additionally, they should continue to exercise, even if it means exercising in their home, because that's an important therapeutic thing or strategy that they must continue to do so that they remain well.
Thank you, Professor Reed. That's excellent advice. Unfortunately, we've come to the end of this session, and what is diabetes? Our panelists were Professor Errol Morrison, Professor Marvin Reed, Dr. Ryan Francis, and Mr. Owen Bernard. I'm your chair, Dr. William Aiken. The next segment will be chaired by Ms. Patrice Gilpin, and the topic will be diabetes in the community. Thank you for listening and continue to stay with us. I am William Aiken. Thank you.
Sweet. Too many carbs. Maybe that. Maybe not. If only they had.
Smoking should be sweet and simple.
Ooh.
The delicious taste of Glucerna gives you the sweetness you crave while helping you manage your blood sugar. Glucerna, your good decision of the day.
Makela come in an outpatient. Don't go nowhere like any, just come straight to this part of the beat.
Because it is the year of the nurse, and then we just run right into it. Yeah. Everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. I am Patrice Gilpin, and I will be your moderator for this second segment, which is titled Recognizing and Preventing Diabetes Complications in the Community. Now, this is a very important segment because diabetes is all about managing that condition, and it is the relationships that you have within your communities that will help you, those resource persons that are going to be really important for you in managing your condition. So we have joining us today, because this is a new environment, we have persons again on location with us and online. So beside me, I have Miss Lurleen Les, and she is the chairman of the Diabetes Association of Jamaica, where she has been a member for the past 30 years and a volunteer for 20 years. Her work is dedicated to the diabetes cause, specifically lay diabetes education, and her interest is in improving the lives of persons living with the condition. She also has been living with diabetes for the past 30 years. So we're looking very much to hearing from her. Joining us from St. Kitts is Paula Francis. She is a registered nurse and a midwife for the past 15 years. She participated in the Diabetes Foot Program in St. Kitts from 2011 to 2012 and the Train the Foot Trainer Program in Trinidad and Tobago in 2013. Nurse Francis is currently serves as the Assistant Nurse Manager in charge of foot and wound care at the JNF General Hospital in St. Kitts and Nevis since 2014. From the country of St. Martin is Shamir Khanna. Shamir is a firefighter by profession for the last 13 years, and he's also the founder and owner of Fire Fit Gym. Shamir is going to speak to us about staying fit, physical exercises, but looking at the key things that persons must consider if they are living with the condition of diabetes. He enjoys creating and bringing ideas and vision to life, and today we are looking forward to hearing from him. And finally, all the way in the UK, we have Debbie Johnson, who is a community champion with diabetes. Community champion. She raises awareness at the grassroots level in the community so people can have a better understanding and are able to manage their condition. Ladies, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. How are you? Everybody's okay? Very well, thank you. Nurse Francis, again, congratulations on this year being the year of the nurse. How has it been for you working in your field and working with persons with diabetes? Nurse Francis?
Hi, good afternoon. It has been very, very good, very challenging, and I must say very rewarding. Good afternoon, Patrice.
Good afternoon. We've had some really great discussions in preparation for today's panel, and I'm excited to share with our viewers today about how these resource persons within communities. Oh, can you turn your mic on?
So for persons with the disease, we find that getting to the doctor, doing their diet, as you have covered in the previous session, physical activity, taking their medication, adhering, compliance is an issue at the community level.
We spoke of
it. Don't hide from it. Get diagnosed and you start managing it. Now, managing diabetes is something that we know that diabetes is 24/7 for a patient. So you need family support. Diabetes goes home with the patient. It does not stay at the doctor's office. So therefore, having that patient get into family support, because when your blood sugar is 30 and very high 20, what do you really remember? What did you remember from the doctor's guidance on what to manage, how to exercise, what to eat? You need that family support to be there to say, you should be eating small amounts regularly. You should be, exercising, remind us, because as a diabetic, we're not always motivated to do these things. So we have to get that, nudging. Some people might say it's nagging, but it's not exactly nagging. It's just nudging along to get the proper management of diabetes, because diabetes that is not managed properly can lead to complications of the kidneys, the eyes, the heart, the limbs, and therefore these costs end up as the family's cost. So it becomes a burden to the family. So let us just cut through the chase and let's say, listen to me, we need to manage diabetes because 1.5 million Jamaican dollars to stay alive with kidney failure is not a nice picture for someone in their 30s. And it's draining the resources of the families. It's actually making the next generation poor by keeping this generation or the older generation alive. So let us get serious about the management of diabetes by bringing in the families, getting communities involved, engaging caregivers, family members, because oftentimes at the dialysis unit that the Diabetes Association runs is that they say, had they known, family members would come and say, had they known that hypertension and diabetes would cause kidney failure, they would have paid more attention.
So, Lurleen, so a lot of family members are unaware of the level of expense that comes with managing the condition. And can family members actually go in consultations with the patient to get that sort of understanding and information from the medical practitioner as well, so they can have a clear understanding of what their needs and requirements are as a family member supporting someone?
Absolutely, absolutely. We welcome the family because when we go to the communities and we do outreach screenings, we ask the family members to come when we see very high A1C levels, high blood sugar levels, high blood pressure readings. We ask family members who are close by, neighbors and friends, come and let us listen and talk. What are the things you should be avoiding in your diet? Because we really have to care for each other, because as I say, when the complication happens, it becomes everybody's burden, and we have to avoid this. And as we talk about the complications, we can't lose sight of the younger and younger age group that is now becoming hypertensive and diabetics. Mm-hmm. We have just done some medical services in at-risk communities in Jamaica, and 60% of those screened were below 60 years of age.
Wow, so the age at which persons are contracting the condition is going lower.
Absolutely.
And Debbie, you are in a very unique situation right now in the UK where the world is pretty much in quarantine. Persons to them. Talk to us about how do people living with the condition in today's COVID-19 pandemic environment, what kind of impact is it having on them and how can they work through it?
The impact it will have on them is that obviously they're not saying if there's something wrong to still encouraging people to still go and see their GP. But with it being locked down now and the face-to-face, a lot of GPs now are not doing the face-to-face. So there's a lot of over the video links and stuff to speak to the patients. Well, not the patients, but the person, all about digital, whereas before the face-to-face has been cut out.
Okay, so we're looking at digital connection, and you play a very important role as a community champion. Talk to us a little bit about what is a community champion and how do you engage persons living with the condition?
With the community champion, the role I play with the community champion is quite really good. At the moment, because of the COVID and the lockdown, it's unfortunate that we can't go into the community, but what it would happen was that we'd go into the community and we'd actually speak to the people involved. We'd actually risk assess people. And if there was something wrong with a person, like we'd take their medical history, their weight, measure their waistband, and then basically we can actually refer them. If we find that they're referring back to their GP. So for me, going out into the community, that role of it is kind of missing now because we don't do it. So a lot of the information is sharing over the internet, on Facebook, social media. These are the channels that we're trying to get through, but they've got the advantage they can still pick up a phone and ring like Diabetes UK to people who are trained like psychologists. Like if you've got like mental health issues and you're struggling, these are the areas we can still
caring for someone living with a condition, and foot care is their health. Nurse Francis?
Yes, dear. Patients need to manage their blood sugar levels as often as possible, regularly. They need to inspect their feet on a daily basis. So patients need to also visit their doctors, and as Dr. Reed would have said, know their condition. They need to know that they're diabetic. They need to accept that they're living with diabetes. And so they need to educate themselves.
Conditions? Oh, what are some of the common food conditions that persons with diabetes face?
The most common food problems that diabetic people face in today's world are diabetic ulcers, foot ulcers. About 95% of persons living with diabetes have diabetic foot ulcers. We also see persons with diabetic neuropathy. You would find that about 25 come in with complaints of unable to feel, loss of sensation. We also see a few persons with abscesses, infections, and charcoal foot, which is a severe complication of diabetes. There's a few persons who will also have blisters from wearing shoes that are too tight, and also a few would have things like corns and calluses under their sole of their feet, and others would have things like gangrene of their toe.
It's important for them to purchase with enough space for them, for their feet to grow into.
Yes, certainly. Certainly, Patrice, certainly. And also very late in the day. It is important that when you're shopping for your shoes, that you do that very late in the day. Because most time persons who are on their feet for a long period of time, their feet became swollen. And so they develop problems. And also it is important that the type of shoes that you wear, you should use adjustable shoes, shoes that have laces. Buckle can be adjusted. So if your feet become swollen, you can adjust the laces in order to get room for your toes to move properly. And most importantly, shoes that are comfortable.
Shoes that are comfortable. Thank you so much, Nurse Francis. Shamir, I'm going to bring you in at this moment because you have a unique responsibility as as the owner of a gym, persons who are living with the condition. And important in managing your lifestyle is exercise. There are certain considerations that should be made between a gym instructor and that client. Let's talk a little bit about that. How did you become involved working with someone with diabetes, and what are some of the things that you have learned that have guided your approach?
Thank you, Patrice. I guess you guys could hear me, right?
We can hear you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, before I got into acting, helping other clients or client in diabetes that was diagnosed with diabetes, I had a new member that registered to the gym, and she was a very young person that was very shy to explain the symptoms that she had. And when she did explain it to me, because we have a questionnaire that explains before you sign up to register to Firefit Gym, that we need to know what type of symptoms you have before you even start working out within the gym. When I basically got all the information I needed from her, she explained to me that she was with a rare type diabetes, which is called MODY 3, which based on research, it's called maturity onset diabetes. It's a very rare case. It could fall between type 1 and type 2. And based on that, I realized that I have to try to get my workers and also my instructors more to the gyms.
It's a team approach that is taken when it comes to fitness.
Yes. Yeah, it's a very much team approach that comes to fitness, yes.
What are some of the exercises that we spoke before now, and you mentioned that you have a survey that you allow your clients to fill out that gives you insight into their health conditions as well as instructions from their doctors. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Okay, before registering to the gym, as noted before, there's a questionnaire that asks you certain questions that, based on the questions that you answer yes, we will know if you are physically fit to attend the gym. If not, oral explaining the reason why or giving us the green light that you may be able to attend the gym. That's
Thank
how
you.
it works basically with us.
Thank you. And what advice would you give to owners of other gyms and fitness instructors to be able to cater to the needs of someone living with diabetes?
What I would do to encourage other fitness gyms on the island and even instructors is to really go out there and learn a lot more on the topic. There's a vast amount of information on the internet, even to YouTube, teaching you the proper methods, how to eat, what not to eat, how to train your clients, how not to train your clients. And as you say, there are a lot of people that are living with it, and they are either they have a little anxiety issues or low self-esteem to even come out and say that they do have it, or put it in the direction of joining each other to be able to work out properly. I would just say that the best advice is just do your research and try to welcome more diabetic patients, citizens into their gyms, the facilities.
Thank you, Shamir.
Yeah.
Debbie?
Hi.
Monitoring as a community educator, be sharing the importance of having clients monitor their levels. Give me some suggestions, some recommendations of how persons can monitor their levels on a weekly basis. You touched on a little bit when we spoke earlier about how do you manage and monitor your numbers so you get the help before it gets too late.
Right. If you're going to monitor, you should be, obviously, it depends which diabetes you have, whether it's type 1, type 2. Obviously, what's going to happen is that you obviously do your finger prick test, or those that have got type 1 who are lucky to have one of these pumps that can do it for them. But the importance is that either way, it's the food that you eat, and everything that you eat is calorie carbs. The carbs that you're eating has got to be monitored so that reducing the carbs is going to reduce it. But like food is energy. The energy that you're eating is fuel. You need to burn up that fuel. So for you to monitor it, you need to be looking at your diary, keeping a diary of your foods, etc., and keeping a log, monitoring your levels.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Monitoring, watch what you eat, and monitor those numbers so when things start to get a little bit out of control, you can realize from the get-go that something is wrong. Ms. Les, you have a program that we would love to share with our viewers today, and it's called the Life for a Child Diabetes Program. Tell us about that.
All right. So as I mentioned earlier, that 60% of the persons that we offer medical services were. So within that group were some of the youngsters on the Life for a Child program. The Diabetes Association runs in conjunction with the International Diabetes Federation and the Ministry of Health. So we have these kids who are spread across the island in 12 hospitals. And within this, the support that we give to the children between the ages of 2 to 25 years of age is their insulin, their syringes, their blood glucose monitor, their test strips, their lancets. We do the A1C test. We do the retinal screening, and all of this is available to the Life for a Child beneficiaries free of cost.
Wonderful. That's really wonderful news. Nurse Francis, we started with you, and we're going to end with you. It is your year, so it's only fitting that you provide the last word. What advice would you have for persons who may not know that they're diabetic, they may be pre-diabetic, as well as for persons living with the condition? Let's talk to them straight on.
First, I would encourage them to educate themselves. They are not yet diabetic, but they may hear about diabetes. And so I would encourage them to find out more about diabetes. Ask persons what is diabetes. Visit health centers, get pamphlets, whatever information that they can find the information from that area. Speak to a family friend and get that information. If they become diabetic, they should do everything in order to prevent any complications. They should check their feet on a daily basis. Do whatever is necessary that need to be done to prevent them from becoming a statistic in the federation or wherever they are living. I also would encourage them to be part of anything that is diabetes. I would like to mention, and give me some time here, Patrice, I would like to mention something about teamwork. It's not about them, and they should not feel as if that they are the only person in the world that is diabetic. They are the only person in the world that is like living with diabetes. That they should remember that, as Miss Les is saying, is a number of persons that is living with diabetes, and they should speak to somebody. Speak, find, do, and never stop doing, never stop learning. They should test their blood sugar once they find out that they are diabetic. They should test it as often as possible. They should exercise as often as necessary in order to prevent from getting obese, as Dr. Reed would have mentioned earlier. As eat healthy diets. It is important when it comes around your diet. You should remember that you're not eating just to eat. You should remember that whatever you eat would affect you for the rest of your life. So eat healthy, use portion sizes, and remember a diabetic person living with diabetes can eat at least 6 times per day. Your regular 3 meals, and in between 2, perhaps 3 hours after that meal, you can have a little snack, a healthy snack, in order to keep your sugar level up. And remember also that we are, we are all in it together.
We are all in it together.
We are all in it together, and monitor for changes in your body and know when and how and what to do if the blood sugar level is out of control.
There is a saying that it takes a village to raise a child, and I will also say that it takes a village to live and help someone living with the condition of diabetes. You are not alone. I want to thank all our community representatives right around the world, nurses, advocates, educators, everyone who really work to create a network of persons who will help persons to feel that they are not alone and support as much as possible. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Lurleen Les, thank you for joining us this evening on location. Nurse Francis, happy year of the nurse. Thank you so much for your care and your efforts within communities in where you live. Debbie Johnson, your role has changed a bit, yes, but I know you continue, and you're being innovative in how you are reaching your community to teach persons and empower them on how to live healthy lives. And of course, Shamir Connor, thank you so much for taking an interest in the lives of your clients at your gym to learn more about the condition so you can help more patients. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us in this session. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll actually hear the experiences of persons living with the condition. We'll be right back.
All right, good job.
The delicious Lucerne gives you the sweetness you crave while helping you manage your blood sugar. Lucerne, your good decision of the day.
Welcome to the third segment of the Rotary Club and the Diabetes Association of Jamaica webinar on diabetes. I am Vernon Darby, consumer advocate and actor, and I will be chairing this third discussion, and we will be sharing our experience as diabetics. We have a doctor with us who will put things in the medical perspective. Thanks to those who have just joined in and those who have been with us since 4 this afternoon. Our panelists are Professor Marvin Reed. Professor. And we also have Dr. Joy Callender. She is on Zoom. Dr. Callender. We also have Dr. Kevin Miller to my left, and also Kenrick Housen. Kenrick, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Now, we are going to tell our story. And of course, my panelists will feel free to participate. Now, I don't know what is your experience, but I noticed that over a period of time, I felt tired. I was putting on more and more weight. I felt sleepy. I said, look like Vernon ready to go to boneyard. I noticed also that my skin was becoming very sensitive. But something happened and I know something was wrong. Every morning I wake up on time, religiously on time. But I noticed that the little fellow didn't wake up at all. And it was only then that I realized that something was very wrong. But just like most men, we have a motor car, we hear a funny sound, we're going to fix it. But with ourselves, there's no problem, that can wait. Until I had to drive myself to the hospital, to Andrews Hospital. And when I reached part of the way, I couldn't see well at all. My eyes went out of focus. Somebody called me, I don't know what happened. I really don't know how I reached the hospital, but I reached. I think God probably drove the car for me. I didn't meet in an accident. And by the way, I must tell you, a few days before that, I just slept from Friday evening until Saturday, 5 o'clock. I felt I was just tired, only to learn after that that I went into a coma. I didn't even realize that. But I must tell you, I was weighing, 230 odd pounds. I'm proud to tell you that I hear my doctor, and all those who are professionals, and I know can show off. Where have all the pounds gone, right? I'm not the only person who have had a very interesting experience, and the other members of the panel, I'd love to hear about their experience.
Okay, so I'm Kevin Miller. My experience is an extraordinary experience. About 2 years ago, I'm going to tell you this quickly. About 2 years ago, I was diagnosed with diabetes. My glucose tolerance test came up to be over 12 millimoles. I was experiencing a whole heap of symptoms, all the symptoms that when I did my research. Went to the doctor, did test over months, and they all said that I was diabetic. No, when I heard that, I didn't fret because I'm a Christian. That's number one. And I started to pray. I started also to follow a particular regime, the New Start regime. So I took a holistic approach. I was weighing 190 odd pounds. And I started to change my diet, change my lifestyle. I'm actually a vegan now, and that wasn't the plan. I didn't even like the idea of veganism, I can tell you that. So I changed my diet. I started to exercise twice a day, and I dropped from 190 to 140 pounds. And then I realized people started wondering if I'm sick because I lost a lot of weight. And then I started to do some resistance training. So I started doing some pull-ups, some press-up, and then I went up to 160 pounds of lean muscle. So I'm very proud of that. So what? So I can stand up too.
So you no longer have any guts?
No guts at all. So my strategy, and I am confident now that I have actually reversed the diabetes, because all the tests now has shown that it's in the normal range. I still have a machine. I test every now and then when I change my meals, and it's always in the normal range. And I switch now from two exercise per day to just exercising once per day.
I falling down on that one.
Okay, and that's extremely important. So I took a holistic approach in managing stress management. Sometimes we don't think about those important things, and the only way I found that I could manage my stress was to actually trust in God. So that worked out for me. And I can tell you, I'm now feeling way better than how I felt before.
By the way, I did tell my viewers out there that I know wake up on time, and the fellow also wake up on time.
If you don't mind, Vernon, for me to just interject here a minute or two. So what we have heard from our two panelists so far is what I call two different versions of a Damascus experience, all right? on one side, we had the more classical presentation. You know, they were tired, they were drifting off to sleep, they had erectile dysfunction, which is actually a fairly common presentation in men with diabetes.
That's a term for it, no?
Yes, man, big fancy word. It just means that the little man not working so well. And then we hear the other Damascus experience where, you know, they went, had their tests done, and they were discovered to be diabetic. And then we look at the approach. What was the common theme that both of them emphasized in their presentation this evening? The common theme was that they worked on that body. All right? They worked on the body.
You pronounce the word right.
Yeah, man.
Body,
I said body, right? There's no you in it.
That was
So in the case of Dr. Miller, he converted a lot of the body fat that he had into muscles. Right? And that's good, because we know that the body fat produces certain chemicals which promotes diabetes, all right?
Really?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
And muscles is one of those organs that helps clear the sugars from out of the bloodstream. So by changing his body composition, he was able to, in a sense, reverse his diabetic tendencies. All right, so congratulations, Dr. Miller, you did very well. And in the case of Mr. Darby, he was able to get back the man to wake up. All right?
And I hear look like a young boy. No, another thing I did too was to change my diet. And, you know, if my doctor, Dr. Donovan Jackson, he's watching too. And many persons feel that it will be difficult to change. No, sir. Life is sweeter without sugar.
All right. So again, what's the term that people usually use for people with diabetes? They call it sugar. And by calling it sugar, what it really does is that it labels sugar as bad. But truth be told, sugar is just one of the many manifestations, one of the many ways in which diabetes presents itself. The truth be told is that your body needs sugar. But what is important is the quality of that sugar, how much you consume it, and how do you mix the diet. So it's not that sugar is bad, all right? If you don't have sugar, you're really not going to live a very good life. But the question is, how do you package it to make it good so that the body appreciates it?
I learned about portion, you know, and I'm not not fully educated, but I learned about portion when I go to the supermarket. You know, I think somebody can tell us about that in terms of, I used to just pick up everything, but it tells you that they told you must only eat a certain portion, starch, and so I watch my portion.
Right, and a part of this panelist group is Dr. Joy Calendar, a well-known nutritionist. So
she's
Joy,
very quiet. I was wondering why she's so
Joy,
quiet.
come in, man. Come tell us about these portion things.
I'm here. Thank you for accommodating me by Zoom. And I've been enjoying the program so far. Congrats to both panelists who are success stories. And just listening, two very important things. Well, the loss of weight, exercise, and changing the diet. and they are both doing marvelously from everything I've heard. 80% of diabetics that we call type 2 adult onset, although we're seeing more children now than we care to, but 80% of diabetics are overweight. That's in that subset of diabetics. So simple weight loss. And as Professor Reed, as Marvin said, we think fat is just there and we don't like how it looks, but fat is metabolically active. It secretes stuff that's bad for us and makes us ill. And diabetes is one of those illnesses. So weight loss, however you do it, changing the diet, the exercise, and the weight loss works. And it is, changing behavior is not easy, but I find that when persons are first diagnosed with diabetes, they are highly motivated. So if they move then and begin to make changes, they can be absolutely successful. And of course, change at any time will help, but the added motivation when first diagnosed. Sometimes though, it's fear, and fear can paralyze, but it can also motivate and spur you into action. At the diet, and I continue to use the word diet simply because for me, the diet is simply what you eat, whatever pattern you choose, whatever, whether you want to be vegan, you want to go on a weight loss diet or weight gain, whatever. It should really be based on lean protein, healthy fats, and we can go into in a little more detail in a while. Complex, high fiber, low glycemic index carbohydrates. I know that that's a mouthful. But
yes,
we talk
common is that one.
Yes, that's a big whole heap of things right there. But what I'm saying is what we say good carbs. Now, sugar is a concentrated source of carbohydrate. And so it comes in for a lot of the flack. And perhaps rightly so, because the majority of people who have high blood sugars, when you reduce, there's enough sugar in things like fruits and ketchup and things that you use, as part of your daily life. So I completely agree with Marvin that sugar is not the culprit. Carbohydrate is what we need to focus on. Because regardless of what kind of carbohydrate we take in, whether it's yam or it's rice or it's sugar, it all breaks down to glucose in the blood. Difference is, of course, that the glucose enters the bloodstream rapidly, whereas the more complex the carbohydrate. So for instance, the sweet potato, which has fiber, it takes much longer to be digested, has a better effect on the blood sugar. And perhaps the move on.
Yeah, I don't know why Kevin, he doesn't want to tell his story.
No, there's something that you have said, and I'm glad you have explained a lot of the technical details, because I started to do a lot of research. And one thing I found, the doctors, I'm not a medical doctor, I'm a computer scientist. So the medical doctors can give me some more insights. But I realized, I started to do a lot of research and looking at the glycemic index of foods. So what I found that worked effectively for me, because I even had a spreadsheet where I started to look at the labels, look at the contents of carbohydrates, how much of the carbohydrate is actually fiber, look at the sugar. And so I started to eat a lot of complex carbohydrates, and not a lot, so I ate in portions. So I eat a whole lot of vegetables, because my meals are big, but the content, because I have a lot of vegetable, sometimes I don't even put in any carbohydrate per se, because I realize that I don't have to put out a lot of effort to get carbohydrate, because it's very common. I mainly focus on like berries. Because the glycemic index is normally apples, berries, and so on. Yes, and I think the glycemic index for the banana is like higher when they compare to other fruits. So sometimes when I'm eating like a banana, I don't eat the big ones. I probably just cut a half if it's too big. So I eat a lot of seeds and nuts for healthy fats, and a lot of berries for the antioxidants and so forth. And I find that works magic.
You know what I've started using now? They call them these the air fryer. So you reduce the use of oil.
That's correct.
Because then you have to watch our cholesterol levels and so on.
Right, yeah. So you know, both Dr. Miller and Joy has used this term glycemic index, and I think some of you out there in cyberspace may be wondering, what is it that they're talking about? This is a new language.
I am wondering too.
but really, what it is that when you eat starchy food, the body actually breaks it down to sugar. And the amount and the speed at which it breaks down is what the glycemic index tries to capture.
Okay.
So food that have high glycemic index, what we're saying is that when you consume those food, it raises your blood sugar much faster and higher than if you have food that have lower glycemic index.
Like soft drinks?
Soft drinks is high glycemic index. As a matter of fact, there's no need for soft drinks. It's really not soft either, you know. It does lots of hard damage to the body.
Really? Yes.
So I don't know how they got this name about soft drink, because it really ain't soft. Unless it keeps you soft.
Be careful. If you drink too much soft drinks, it will keep you soft. I love that one. I hear Mr. Housen is very quiet. I wonder if he doesn't want to tell his story. He's hiding his story from us. Mr. Housen.
Listening to you guys are sounding big words with Kevin and Dr. Barres. I'm here. My name is Kenrick Housen. I'm from the Rotary Club of St. Martin Sunset. And like the two gentlemen earlier, I've been diagnosed for last year, June 2019, and didn't have any symptoms. I just had one pain in my ankle and didn't sprain or didn't do anything with it. And I was like, let me go to the doctor to see what happened. He's like, hey, long time you didn't do a checkup. Let's do the checkup. Let's check everything. When I got back the results, he was like, if I'm okay, if I don't feel any, if my eyes are not hurting, he's like, your levels are high. Like I was at 13.3, my A1C. And he was like, listen, you have, my mom also has it. She's been diagnosed 36 years now. She's a type 1. She takes insulin. He's like, you know this, and this is something I always had to hear from my mom, is like, hey, you have to be careful. It runs in the family. You need to check yourself. And so what I did.
So it's can be hereditary then?
Yes, man.
Yes, definitely.
So people can fall through two families.
Yeah, so I was prescribed some metformins, and I had to take those once a day, and I got the same, change your diet, some exercise, and also take the medicine. And I have not been a medicine person, so if I had a headache, I would write it out. So I looked up, I did some research online, and I saw that the metformin was very effective with controlling your glucose, but it was also one of the top pills that people stop taking. So I was like, okay, there's a possibility that you can stop taking and I don't have to be on medication for life. So I said, okay, let me ease off. So I wasn't doing all 3 of the recommendations because I wanted to figure out exactly like what would work for me. So I changed my diet and I was using the pills. And I actually, like the gentleman said, I lost a lot of weight. And everybody started to wonder if you're sick. It's like, hey, you sick? And I was like, well, yeah, I've been diagnosed to be a diabetic. So, and that had me a little proud a little bit, but also like everybody's just asking, like a lot of weight dropped off at the time. And I ended up actually stopping the pills and continue with the diet and then starting the exercise. So like right now, my last A1C, I was at a 5.9, which my doctor was very proud. And he's like, hey guy, you almost don't have diabetes anymore. So I was like, well, something is good. So I'm not like Kevin, full of charts and breaking down the foods. But what I do, I definitely, I remove rice from my diet. So I eat more vegetables. So if I go out or anywhere, I'm out with my friends, it was like, you want food? And it's like, hey, we got rice. And I'm like, no rice. And so a lot of my friends now are familiar with that. And it's something that we all should be proud of, or not proud, but there's no stigma behind diabetes, something that can be cured or managed properly.
But Kevin, I'm here, I'm sure many of my viewers and listeners are probably wondering, is that Trinidadian? Is it that Barbadian?
No, I'm actually from St. Martin.
St. Martin. Okay,
St. Martin
good.
in the house.
Good. Oh, all right. Now, where do we go from here? Is it a death sentence? But we are still living, right?
No, definitely not a death sentence.
And we are living well.
Yes. And I must say that it runs in my family like, yes, it's serious in my family. Many members of my family actually is suffering from diabetes. So I am now in a position where I'm trying to tell them that it's not a death sentence and you can actually reverse the disease. And I think the main thing is to make it be a holistic approach, meaning it's a lifestyle. I don't think about it as a diet. I think about it as a lifestyle. So I ensure that I'm drinking enough water, resting, managing my stress, just an overall approach, trusting in God as I'm a Christian, and that has worked out so wonderfully for me.
Well, I'm glad you didn't write an app for it.
It's funny you say that because I actually wrote an application to help me manage the actual nutrients and the carbohydrates, but it was a little app that I had on a personal server. So
we have to hold on to it.
probably one day I'll share it with the world.
Many of us, we are tired of for those who say type 1, you have to get a needle and stick your finger on everything. And where's the medication? Are we going somewhere where we can probably test ourselves somewhere in a different way?
Right. So there's lots of research being done on the technological scene. So on one hand, we're looking at methods or techniques to monitor your blood sugars or to monitor your internal physiology, and we're trying to find non-invasive way of doing that. So that's something that we're working on. We're trying to find ways of even replacing your pancreas. So, the islet cells, which are the ones that make the insulin. We're trying. You put the.
Might not stop working. My pancreas has stopped working.
I know. We are trying to be able to figure.
Guess what now? I see a gentleman who I think I know. And I think he wants to ask a question.
Sure.
Yes, I'd like to ask a question. I'm hearing.
It sounds like
change your lifestyle, gone vegan and everything. But what keeps in my mind is moderation. Moderation.
Yes,
moderation. Do I have to go drastic or do I just go moderate?
Well, it depends on the severity. It really depends on the severity. Some people are early enough, in which case moderation may be an appropriate intervention, while some people are much further gone, and therefore, you may need a drastic shock to the system in order to reverse or to get control or to gain control. So everything is really relative. But the goal is for the vast majority of persons, especially individuals who are not yet diabetic, the key thing is moderation. We say we like to look at foods in what we call food categories or groups. So food from starch, food from fats and oil, legumes, your fruits and vegetables, and your protein. The idea here is that in the Caribbean diet, we get it wrong. We have half of oils and gravy and meat. So instead of eating one piece of chicken, we want 3 pieces and 4 pieces of chicken. We just have gotten the mixture. Yes, and the dumpling has to be a carton. You have to have half dozen before you feel good. So the issue is the portion size, which we wanted to talk to. Most of us get it wrong. Half of your plate should really be vegetables.
Exactly. But Doc, we just have about a minute or two left. My concern is what role is the state playing on the Bureau of Standards, for example, in ensuring that the type of foods that we have out there, when you look on the shelves, food for children, do we have the laws that stipulate that the sugar level in a particular commodity should not be above certain levels?
Right.
What is the state doing?
The short answer is the state can do much, much, much more. And so we have consumer lobby groups, we have patient advocacy groups, we have community groups who are pushing the government to have proper labels on food so that individuals can know exactly what it is that they're eating. We have to be able to translate that label into effective actions. And of course, we also need to get the message out there as to how people can live a healthy lifestyle and to promote physical activity.
Well, yes. I think we only have a minute left. Any final points that anybody want to leave us with? We are still alive. That's a final point. And you know, I would want to say to everybody that if you want to live a sweeter life, you see, reduce the intake of sweeter things.
Very true.
Yes, I agree. All right. Joy. Joy? I think Joe wants to make a final point. We're not hearing Joy at all. All right, we have to close at this point. I want to thank all my panelists, Professor Marvin Reed, Dr. Joy Callender, Dr. Kevin Miller, and Mr. Kenrith Housen there. So thank you all. I enjoyed it. I hope my audience learned quite a bit. I am Vernon Darby saying to you, stay with us for the next segment, which starts later on. The chair will be Dr. Peter Johnson, and he will be joined by Dr. William Aiken, Dr. Keisha Buchanan Walters, and Dr. Karima Matthews. Vernon Darby saying to you, I've learned quite a lot by myself. Continue to stay with us and continue to share this video, which will be online for all to share. Live a sweeter life, and you don't have to dead before you're actually dead. I am alive. Good evening.
While helping you manage your blood sugar. Glucerna, your good decision of the day.
Something sweet. Too many carbs. Maybe that. Maybe not.
Glucerna, your good decision of the day.
Something sweet. Too many carbs. Maybe that. Maybe not. If only they had...
Snacking should be sweet and simple.
Ooh.
The delicious taste of Glucerna gives you the sweetness you... Your good decision of the day.
Something sweet. Too many carbs. Maybe that. Maybe not. If only they had...
Snacking should be...
Can everybody hear me?
Yes, Keisha here.
All right.
One second.
Hi, welcome again to the World Diabetes Day webinar. It has been an amazing discussion so far. I hope you are getting some information and feeling empowered to take control of your life, take control of your health. This is the final session for this afternoon, and it's a big session. We're now going to be speaking to diabetes and the reproductive and sexual health. And I am your co-chair because our other chairperson is online, and that is Dr. Peter Johnson. Dr. Johnson, are you here?
Yes, I'm here. Good evening.
Good evening. So we do have a lovely panel list of panelists with us this evening. Again, you met him earlier. He did chair the first session, and that's Dr. William Aiken. He has his own credentials. You know, he has a long line of credentials as a consultant urologist and a senior lecturer in surgery at the University of the West Indies. We also have Dr. Karima Matthews, who is a graduate of the University of the West Indies, Mona campus. She's a member of the American Congress of Obstetrician and Gynecology. And we have Dr. Keisha Buchanan. Now, Dr. Keisha Buchanan Walters is a graduate of the University of the West Indies, where she studied obstetrics and gynecology. So, doctors, male and female, to talk to us about sexual health and the reproductive system if you are living with diabetes. Let me start with Dr. Buchanan Walters. How does having diabetes affect someone's sexual and reproductive health?
Good evening. Thank you for having me. Diabetes affects so many aspects of sexuality and reproduction. It affects the act of having sex. It affects the ability to get pregnant, and then it affects pregnancy. So in terms of sexual health, some women experience difficulty getting aroused, difficulty achieving an orgasm, pain during sex, a lack of interest in sex. This is because of the decreased innervation of the clitoral area, decreased innervation of the G-spot, so to speak. So sexual dysfunction is a lot more common, and also because of the decreased innervation and poor blood supply to the reproductive organs, it's harder to get pregnant because there are ovulation problems, difficulty ovulating. Very commonly, a lot of the ladies had pre-existing polycystic ovarian syndrome, irregular periods, and anovulation. And then it also affects the pregnancy itself in terms of just difficulties throughout the pregnancy. Difficulty getting pregnant, higher incidence of miscarriage, higher incidence of complications during the pregnancy. And this is both maternal complications and complications for the baby. So.
Thank you. Dr. Johnson, would you like to take over the male question to Dr. Aiken to find out on the male's perspective?
Sure. So, Bill, we've heard that diabetes affects pretty much every system in the human body. How does it affect sexual health in men?
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that question, Dr. Johnson. So diabetes profoundly has a negative impact, profoundly affects male sexual health. It affects all aspects of male sexuality, both a desire and interest for sex, what we call libido. It causes a depression in the male libido. It causes a depression in arousal, which is manifested in the male by getting an erection. Men who have diabetes, approximately 80 to 90% of them experience varying degrees of erectile dysfunction. It affects the ability to ejaculate. A lot of men with diabetes develop retrograde ejaculation. Diabetes does this because diabetes affects every system in the body, including the nervous system and what we call the vascular system or blood vessels. An erection is really a neural and vascular event. When a man is sexually stimulated either by what he sees or what he feels, nerve impulses have to travel to the male genital organs. And diabetes has a profoundly negative impact on nerve transmission, especially if it is not controlled over a long period of time. Persons with diabetes also tend to be overweight and obese. And we know that and this obesity tends to be around the intra-abdominal organs around the waist, what we call centripetal obesity. This fat tissue converts the male hormone testosterone into female hormones. So men have lower levels of testosterone, which is very important for a man's interest and desire for sex. And it's also important for getting erections. We also know that the hypothalamus and pituitary, the master controllers of the hormone system in the brain, is adversely affected by this fat content in the abdomen. And so we definitely know that persons with overweight and obesity, they experience a diminished libido. And because diabetes adversely affects both the blood vessels, both in a big way in terms of narrowing the blood vessels, as well as at the cellular level, at the ability for blood vessels to relax and blood flow to increase. We know that not only does it impair the nerve transmission to the penis, but it also impairs blood flow into the penis and an inability for the penile tissues to relax and fill with blood. So diabetes, in effect, affects all different aspects of male sexuality.
Okay, let's take it step by step. Two persons meet, they find each other attractive, they decide to get in a relationship. They are both living with diabetes. How do you, let's start with Dr. Aiken, for you to continue in, how can men really overcome the challenge and perform? And then we're gonna ask Dr. Karima Matthews to come in and speak to how can women overcome that challenge of sexual intercourse and the challenges there to really satisfy each other?
Okay, so to answer that question, one of the recurring themes that has we keep hearing over and over is weight control through diet and exercise. When somebody suffers erectile dysfunction as a result of diabetes, it's very important that you don't just simply give them a Viagra tablet or an injection in the penis, but you manage a patient holistically. And what that means is that weight control is very important. These patients have to lose weight. They have to lose weight through a program of exercise, as well as portion size control, the type of food that they eat. We heard about the low glycemic index foods. We have to make sure their cholesterol level is controlled. If they're smoking, we have to get them to stop smoking, get them exercising. We have to check their male hormone testosterone. If it's low, we have to get them to lose the weight to get the testosterone levels to be higher. And we may even have to give additional testosterone to them. So it's important from the point of the male's point of view that it's not just simply giving them a Viagra tablet, but all of these things have to be holistically looked at, in addition to giving drugs like Viagra, Levitra, and Cialis. Or if those don't work, we can teach a man to give himself a small injection in the penis that will allow him to get an erection. These are just some other methods. There's what is can you and then if all of these things fail, there is surgery. We can insert a penile implant that can be inflated and deflated.
Wow, that's interesting. So lots of options open to men. If you didn't know about all of them, Dr. Aiken is here to share them with you. And I would love to know now the options open for women. Dr. Matthews, how can women overcome this hurdle and enjoy her sexual life?
Hi, good evening, everybody, and thank you for having me. I'm coming to you from the very small but beautiful island of Anguilla. For ladies, I would just like to reiterate what Dr. Aiken said. Basically, we want to make sure that we counsel patients with a holistic approach. So one of the most important things is getting your diabetes or glucose levels under control. Once that is done, most other things will fall into place. There may also be counseling that may be necessary because it will take a toll on the relationship. If both persons are diabetic or just one person is diabetic, it may be taking a toll on the relationship. Doing hormonal tests to see if she is low in a particular hormone, we can replace that. But for the most part, getting the diabetes under control is one of the best things that you can do to ensure a more successful sex life. And also, once the diabetes or the glucose levels in the blood or reducing the levels of hyperglycemia, then you will be at less risk for infections and so on. That will also make sexual intercourse difficult between couples. So again, it is a holistic approach that everybody has been saying. Maintaining your glucose levels is very important across the board. So whether it's for obstetrics, gynecology, urology, nutritionist, everybody, the maintaining of normal glucose levels is very important.
I want to follow up on something that you said, which spoke to infections. What are some of the infections that women living with the condition would face, and how regular would those be?
Okay, well, thank you for asking that question. So as we know, diabetes mellitus affects, and as everybody has said, it can affect any organ system. So one of the systems it affects is your immune system. So your ability to fight off infections that would normally not be a problem becomes a big problem with persons with diabetes, especially if it is uncontrolled diabetes. So the higher your glucose levels are, is the more infections that you can get. So women with diabetes often have recurrent or resistant vulvovaginitis, which can be caused most commonly, it can be fungal or bacterial, but most commonly can be caused from candida, which is like a yeast infection. So sometimes when I see somebody with a very robust yeast infection, you know, if they're not known to be diabetics, that's something that signals off to me this person should be screened for diabetes, where the genital area may be very red, erythematous, swollen. It's a lot of yeast-like discharge, which is just as your textbook would describe it. So whenever a patient comes to me and says, you know, doc, I've been having recurrent infections, I've been taking these over-the-counter medications, it may go away for a couple of days and it's back again, then that's one thing for me to say, let me test you for diabetes. And more often than not, it comes back as a positive test. So resistant or recurrent yeast infections in women can be a signal that the person has underlying diabetes and just may not be aware of it.
Thank you. Dr. Johnson, we're tag teaming this thing, you know. I want to throw over to you for any questions you may have.
Sure. So for both our gynecologists and or urologists, Bill, following sex, right, there is reproduction. Does diabetes have any effect on both women and men's ability to conceive? I'll ask the gynecologist first and then ask Bill to answer regarding men.
Okay, well, women who have diabetes, they tend to have a higher incidence of anovulation, which just means that every month a woman's ovary should release an egg, and that doesn't happen consistently. There's a higher incidence of polycystic ovarian syndrome, and that makes it more difficult to get pregnant. There's also a difficulty in terms of problems in terms of the embryo implanting, because the endometrial lining might not be as robust and thick and supportive of the pregnancy. And there's also a higher incidence of miscarriages. Especially if the diabetes is not well controlled, because that's the single most important thing. You should always get your sugar under control before you get pregnant. Become healthier before you get pregnant. Lose weight, eat healthily before you get pregnant, and get the HbA1c at a more optimal level. There's a higher risk of birth defects, and with that comes the risk of miscarriages in the first trimester and later on in the pregnancy. So also women who are at high risk of diabetes before the pregnancy, for example, women who have their parents are diabetic, they should optimize their weight before trying to get pregnant, because that's a common thing that we encounter. Some women, they're obese, they're over 200 pounds, they want to get pregnant, they can't get pregnant, they're struggling with polycystic ovarian syndrome, they want us to start fertility pills, and the pregnancy is just not happening. And a lot of times, once they lose weight, that's all it takes. The other difficulty with getting pregnant is just some women with diabetes don't have that interest in sex. So if you're not having sex, then you can't really get pregnant. So that's another thing. That's the lack of arousal, lack of interest. They have a lot more difficulty with getting an orgasm. So that's another. And a lot of women actually don't talk about this. You know, like men will say, boy, doctor can't stand up. But a lot of women, and a lot of these women are middle-aged women, so maybe they feel it's a bit taboo, or they're a bit embarrassed to talk about it. You know, what you old lady talking about? You can't have sex. You know, you should be in church. You know, that kind of thing. So, you know, and the younger women with diabetes, they have those sexual challenges also, and then that makes it difficult to get pregnant.
Dr. Aiken, let's pick up on that. Lower the sex drive.
Yes, so absolutely. So the question is, do men with diabetes find it difficult to father a child? And the answer is yes. So the overweight and obesity associated with type 2 or maturity onset diabetes creates what is called a pro-inflammatory state. In other words, there are a lot of inflammatory mediators going around in the body when you're overweight and obese. And these cause, these negatively affect the sperm cells or spermatozoa that are responsible for fertilizing the female egg. And so these pro-inflammatory what we call reactive oxygen species, cause the sperm cells to be morphologically abnormal, or a greater proportion of them are morphologically abnormal, and they don't move as well. Not only that, but the men also have a reduction in libido, that is their interest and desire for sex, because of the diabetes. So if you're not having sex, as Keisha said earlier, you're not going to be able to get someone pregnant. So yes, it has a negative impact on conception as well in the male.
So Karima.
Yes, Dr.
Right, Karima. Once a woman becomes pregnant, are there any particular issues that she may face that may pose challenges for her pregnancy?
Thank you for that question. So women with diabetes in pregnancy do face certain challenges. So number one, again, you have to be compliant with your medication. And there are challenges that's faced with the mother and with the fetus or the growing baby inside. So for the mother, she's at increased risk of developing other comorbidities such as pregnancy-induced hypertension, increased risk for cesarean delivery, increased risk for, if it's a vaginal birth, she may have a shoulder dystocia, because these babies tend to be very large or macrosomic.
What is that? Hold on, you're using some big words here that, you know, we want to make sure everybody who's listening understands.
Yes, I'm going to explain. right? So the babies of a diabetic mother tend to be very big, and we call that macrosomia. And that's when the baby weighs over 9 pounds or approximately 4 kilograms. So sometimes when that baby is being delivered normally through the vaginal canal, the baby can become stuck. And that can lead to certain maneuvers that the doctor has to do, breaking the baby's shoulder to get the baby out, which we don't want to do. So most times, the diabetic mothers do a C-section to prevent that kind of event from happening. Most of the times, the diabetic mothers have to be induced earlier because of unexplained stillbirth or intrauterine fetal demise that can occur before the full 9 months of pregnancy. So these mothers are usually induced if we think the baby is of a normal size and can get into the world through the vaginal canal. If the baby is of a bigger size, then that patient is scheduled for an elective cesarean section so that it's better for both mommy and for the baby. When the baby is born, sometimes these babies are not able to maintain their glucose levels. So they tend to be they have hypoglycemic episodes. And that means that the baby's sugar level dips very often. And I'll just share an experience with you. I had a patient about a week ago that I delivered. She was diabetic and she's gestational diabetic. So she was not diabetic before the pregnancy, but was diagnosed with diabetes during the pregnancy. And I noticed while I was doing the ultrasound, this baby was measuring bigger and bigger and bigger at each visit. And when she was 35 weeks, meaning that she had 5 weeks left for the baby to stay inside to get to her due date, this baby was weighing 9 pounds plus.
Wow. Wow.
And then at that time, when she came I saw her like 2 days after, her blood pressure was elevated. She was swollen. So I sent her into the hospital and I did the C-section the next day. So at 35 weeks and 5 days, the baby came out weighing 9 pounds and 5 ounces. That baby was almost as big as myself.
That's pretty amazing.
Again, we run the risk of when we're managing these patients with diabetes, the mode and timing of delivery, because I could not risk the baby getting any bigger, going to the full 9 months. Remember, that baby had at least another month to stay inside, technically. But due to the size of the baby and the complications that we know can occur, especially the most dreaded one is sudden, unexplained intrauterine fetal demise, where the baby just dies inside of the mommy, and we don't want that at all. So
yes,
again,
that's actually a great
it's
segue
important
into the
for them to control their blood glucose level.
Keisha.
Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Matthews.
Thank you.
Keisha, go ahead, Dr. Johnson.
All right, Keisha, is there...
Would be if the lady has polycystic ovarian syndrome before, obesity, a family history, poor lifestyle, poor eating habits. So there is pre-gestational diabetes, and then there's gestational diabetes that develops. Most women with gestational diabetes, it actually resolves after pregnancy. Miraculously goes away. affect